Hello and welcome to Unproductive, a productivity series for the rest of us. In this video, I wanted to talk specifically about energy and how you can incorporate energy, or spoons if you're somebody with disabilities and use that vocabulary, into your productivity system. So I referenced this briefly in the last video in this series, but I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive into energy because I think it's a really important element for a lot of people, especially when you're doing like a task management system, and whether you have effectively incorporated energy into your task management system might be what determines whether or not it works for you. There are different ways you can do this. So it can be very simple. Like, for example, I saw a recent video on how to get your shit together, where Laura talks about the system she uses with just plain old to-do lists being like a red, yellow, green. So red would be high energy, and she tries not to do more than one of those high energy tasks a day, for example. So a very basic system. I also use a 3-level, fairly simple system. So in my task manager, one of the tags I use is for energy, high, medium, and low. It's actually built into the one I use, but you can always just add energy as a tag. There's a few different ways if you're doing tagging and you want to separate out a category, but the category isn't built into your application. You could do that by writing the name of the category, so like energy : high, energy : low, which helps you to find everything alphabetically. Or if you want it to always go to the top, you can assign specific special characters to the beginning of each tag, like a $sign, an @sign, a hashtag, something that you'll always use for that. So like you might use hashtag for energy and it would just be hashtag high, hashtag medium, hashtag low, however it works for you. So I do high, medium, low, and then for me, that works pretty well. I don't need like a more differentiated system. And I will use it based on how I'm feeling at the moment. So I will just check in with myself and say, like, where am I right now? And I will filter my tasks according to how I'm feeling. And I use I use a few different levels that I'll check in on, but energy is one of them. So, if I'm feeling super low energy, I can filter to only display those tasks. So I don't feel bad about not completing the ones that would require more energy than I actually have. You might also, so one thing about me is that while I do have disabilities, none of them are at the level where at the end of the day I'm likely to physically not be able to, say, use the restroom or make myself some kind of food, even if it's grabbing a bag of chips. I can usually do those very basic self-care things, and so for me, I can do it that way, where I just check in on where I am at different times of the day. Now, if you're somebody whose disabilities mean that you have a very limited number of spoons per day, and if you exceed them, you're not going to be able to do critical things, then you might want to approach it a little bit differently. You might want to have a way that you can not just ask where you are at the given moment, but also think about how many spoons you have left for the day and decide what you're going to do based on that. So you could do that kind of ad hoc using a system like mine. I mean, you could just sort of check in with yourself and say, okay, I feel medium energy now, but if I do a medium energy task, like, how will I be feeling later? How long is this task? You could also get real complicated. So you could, for example, in a task manager, or even like you could use an Excel for this, you could assign numbers of spoons. So you can basically designate how much is, for you, 1 spoon. So you can decide on, maybe on your average day, you want to say, I have about 20 spoons on a sort of so-so day. And so my definition of a spoon is about a 20th of my ability for that day. And you can kind of figure out for you what that looks like. So what kind of task would be a 1-spoon task versus a 5-spoon task versus a 15-spoon task. And then you could literally assign spoons to each and kind of check in with yourself. And once you have figured out your idea of like what 1 spoon means for you, then you can kind of start to understand like, okay, I feel like I've spent about this many spoons, or have about this many spoons left, and kind of adjust from day to day. Maybe you're having a lower spoon day, then you know that the number of spoons you start with is lower, which means you can do fewer things. And so you're kind of balancing between tasks in your task manager and the number of spoons that it takes you to do your regular daily stuff. If you really wanted to get advanced, like you could do this in an Excel and actually put in formulas so that you could say like, I have X number daily functions take me 5 spoons, I'm starting at 10 spoons, and it will tell you how many spoons you have and tell you which tasks are available. I mean, you could go real far with that if you wanted to. But that would be, it takes a little time to calibrate and to define a spoon, but once you've done that, it could be really useful for some people. Like what I like about putting energy in is that it does give me that menu of things to choose from, so that I don't feel bad or guilty about what is not in that list. It's just not on my list for right now. And I combine the energy tags with some other tags. So like, for example, I include a duration tag, so that's actually built into my app as well, but it's about how long the task will take. So I have that, I have the amount of energy. I also include a tag for focus because I have ADHD or ADD. So for me, I might have high energy, but low focus. So then I would want to do something like maybe there's an errand I have to run that is going to take a lot of energy for me to leave the house and go do the thing, but like I don't really have to focus. I could be skipping through a podcast every 15 seconds if I wanted to, as opposed to maybe something that's lower energy, but I have to focus, something I have to read might fall under that. So I will tag each by both, and then that way I can literally filter by something as detailed as I have 20 minutes, I am medium energy, medium focus, what is available to me. So you could do that layering if you want to. I also want to acknowledge that it does take energy to categorize things. So if you are thinking about these things going, wow, like this is a lot of effort, think about what would work for you. For me, whenever I put things in, it's actually less energy personally to, like when I'm writing the name of the task, I also give it its tags right then, rather than the traditional GTD system of putting it into an inbox and processing later, because I find that takes less energy for me than sitting down with the 50 tasks I put in this week and trying to categorize them all. But you may find that it makes more sense for you. It's better to just be able to put the name in now, so that regardless of your energy level, you can at least have it in your system, and then maybe on a day that is less busy for you, you can categorize. So you can play around with that and see what works. I would love to hear from you if you do incorporate energy in some way, or spoons, into your productivity. How do you do that? What kind of tips and tricks have worked for you? Are there any particular apps that you have found to be especially useful for this? Please do leave a comment below, and if you enjoyed this series, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know if there are topics that you would particularly like me to cover. All right, thanks.